and we're working to reinvent how users listen to, share, and discover music. So to start, I just want to do a quick show of hands. Who has a music app on their phone other than Rdio? Get out. I'm joking. You could stay. Just please delete it. But of course, we'd like for you to think of Rdio as the only music app out there, but there are, in fact, several. So how do we distinguish ourselves? And you know, it's a lot of the things you'd expect. It's trying to have the biggest catalog, the most music, you know, being in the most countries, and having a great marketing and PR machine. But above all else, we see great design and user experience as what ultimately makes a difference. And so we see this as the foundation of all our efforts. And when folks talk about us, this tends to be what they pick up on most, this design focus. This is an example from the New York Times. So what do I mean when I say design focus? I don't mean that the success of Rdio hinges on us choosing the right typeface, though we can't help obsessing over it like it does. We want our work to be simple and elegant and beautiful, but that's not the focal point. That's hopefully the end result when a lot of other factors come together. So today, what I want to talk about are what we see as kind of the key ingredients that lead to great design. Specifically, I'm going to talk you through a few sections. The first, environment. So how do you foster a culture where great design is possible? Principles, what makes a great design great, and what's kind of our philosophy for design at Rdio? And then finally, execution. How do you go about deciding what actually to build and where to start? How do designers and engineers work together? Things like that. So to start, design-led companies are a very popular topic right now. You can count on Fast Company touching on this at least once per issue. But I think it's a good way to describe how we work at Rdio. So I wanted to talk a little bit about it, what it means for us. It doesn't mean that everyone involved in the decision-making process is a designer, though we do invest in our design team, and we're blessed to have a really talented, hardworking, likable design team. Tearing up just talking about it. But what I mean more is that design is an organizational mindset. So when we think about where to focus our efforts, and we think about solving problems for our users and making new stuff we think they'll love. So what does this look like in practice? A few points I want to talk through on this. First, you know, if you're like us, you've got a million different things competing for your attention. If you're a small app maker, it's all the things you're trying to juggle yourself. If you're a bigger company, it's all the things everyone else in the company thinks you should be focusing on. So how do you create an environment in that world that's conducive to great design? So I think to start, it helps to recognize that groups like business development and monetization and marketing are all playing vital roles for your company, but they're operating with a different set of goals than the design team. So you know, that's as it should be. You know, they're working on some of the things that'll help make the difference between reaching scale or just reaching your mom and close friends with your app. Capture their input at the roadmap level, and then try and insulate your design team from any of that noise that can be distracting. You want to stand guard and kind of let your designers have a monastic focus on just creating a great experience for your users. So, but designers aren't working in complete isolation, so how should the work flow to them? Where should they start? This is a tough pill to swallow as a product manager. Brief should be brief. I'm talking about the kind of documentation we use to start a project. If you're not opening Photoshop or touching code, the best way to prove your value is to make these long, thoughtful, at times poetic Google Docs. Unfortunately, that's not always the best way to service the creative process, and it can even be counterproductive at times. So what is the right way to start a project? We found that the more prescriptive and detailed a brief, the more the end result looks like that brief. And the creative process is where breakthroughs can happen, so it should allow space for creativity. So what we try to do is just articulate the problem in as simple way as possible, and then let the design process really dictate the shape of the assignment with very few constraints. So this emphasis on unconstrained approach to design allows us to be optimistic. We don't consider design to be like a worst case scenario exercise. We're not strictly focused on solving problems or putting out fires and things like that. We want our designers to be able to be ambitious and to kind of design towards what we think our ideal state would be and obtain a vision for what we're building towards. We found that limiting the constraints on the design process allows the best ideas to kind of emerge and solidify. Which brings me to my next point. Some of these ideas will be stupid. So if you're emphasizing unconstrained design, you also need to build in a rigorous design review process to challenge that thinking. And so at Rdio, every Thursday, we all get in a room and we look at each other's work and we just beat it up and have kind of that hard-hitting critique that really challenges everyone's thinking. And we don't worry about hurting each other's feelings. I think the designers look for their work to be challenged that way, to really validate their thinking, and if the best ideas will survive all that, and you'll be confident in what you ultimately plan to move forward with. So, but how do you get that confidence? How do you decide what is great about a given design? So I want to talk a little bit about what we think makes a great UI great at Rdio. To start, this is sort of a broad principle that I think helps describe our mindset of how we approach our work. In the tech community, we talk about our work as disruptive, and we want to eat our competitors' lunch before they eat our lunch, and we're going to innovate or die. And we talk a little bit like playground bullies, I think. And in reality, whatever it is you're trying to destroy actually became dominant because it got something right and resonated with people in some way. So for every advancement, it's worth thinking about what are we replacing and what was great about that thing. The promise of Rdio is unlimited access to all of the world's music instantly. And this is a radical shift from how we used to listen to music. So what are some of the trade-offs that come with that? How does that guide some of our design thinking and some of the challenges we face? Give you a few examples. So first, new music technology has a democratizing effect, right? So recorded music brought Beethoven from the concert hall into the kitchen, and then every major advancement since that has been about making it easier for artists to distribute their music and easier for listeners to access that music. And so this is especially true now with Rdio, where it's never been easier for music to reach listeners regardless of how obscure that music may be. The trade-off is that there's no gatekeeping anymore. The music landscape has been flattened out. How do you make sense of it? So to address this, we've tried to kind of reintroduce that notion of gatekeeping, but we let you choose your own gatekeepers. And this is where Facebook comes in. So we emphasize Facebook sign-up. So when you first log into our product, you're immediately met with all your friends on our product that are using the service. And then importantly, we let you choose who among those people you want to follow on Rdio and let shape your music discovery on our product. And if you're making your apps, this is something you'll have to think about. Do you maintain your own social graph separate from Facebook? And we found that because your friend set on Facebook tends to be very large, that it's great to let your users choose who among those people they want to interact with in the context of your app. Second, 20 million songs on Rdio, more than you could listen to in a lifetime. And you're not constrained by how many CDs you have in your car or how many gigs you have on your iPod. It's just all of the music all the time. The trade-off here is that choice is overwhelming. You can get this analysis paralysis. So in this world of infinite choice, how do we create that sense still of scarcity and limit the amount of choices our users have to make? How do we get from here to here? And this is really core to a lot of the kind of browsing features we have in our product. I'll give you a few examples. First, heavy rotation. So this is the default view into Rdio. This is the first thing you see when you log into our product. And this is where we use that social graph you've built to just find the highlights among what your friends are listening to. So we create scarcity here through collaborative filtering. Next example, recommendations. So if your friends know music, Rdio tries to know you. So as you listen to music and are active on our service, we're compiling music recommendations and putting aside things we think you'll love. So if you're ever stuck in that kind of analysis paralysis moment, there's always a few new gems waiting for you to discover. And finally, stations. Sometimes you just want to push play and just do no work at all, right? So we try and have a really good lean back listening experience, which is all about just making music discovery effortless. We also that includes this new feature we have called UFM. So in my case, JSON FM, where you don't even have to choose the station. You just push play and we start building a steady stream of songs that we think you'll like. How can this apply in whatever you're working on? I think the key takeaway here is that in the digital world, it's very transient, and data is ephemeral. So excuse me, I should say that in the digital world, if you're making an app that has a ton of data in it, think about how to make it easier for your users to choose between, to make choices. You know, put the burden on your app to filter that down and curate that data, and don't put all that cognitive load on your users. Okay. Next example. Unlimited access. Rdio is $10 a month, and that allows you to play all the music you want as much as you want. You know, there's no worrying about, you know, should I download this or that, and thinking about your budget on a song-by-song basis. This is kind of the holy grail for a music collector. Except, what does it mean to be a music collector in a world where you don't actually own your music? So to address this, we've tried to retain that idea of collecting in our app. We have a collection feature, and we allow you to keep track of all the music you care about in Rdio. Your collection and playlists live under a section called Your Music in our side nav, and this is, you know, about emphasizing that notion of personal curation and ownership in a different sense. We also have a badging system. You see these green icons and orange icons. This is visual indicators of things you've added to your collection or synced to your mobile device. So wherever you encounter music in our app, we're trying to emphasize the way you relate to it personally. So thinking about this, how this applies to your product, again, data is ephemeral. How can you let your users keep track of the things that they care about? How can you let them using your app be something that has lasting value and that rewards repeated usage? That's really what we're after here, right? This is also great to keep in mind when you're building something cross-platform. You know, our collection feature works the same on mobile and iPad and desktop, and so this helps kind of establish that thread as your users move from one platform to the next. Finally, instant music. There's no sifting through CDs with Rdio. There's no waiting for downloads to happen. It's just instant music immediately at your fingertips. Except it's not actually at your fingertips in the same way music used to be. So how do we still create that strong connection to music? How do we, bring music to life when you're just looking at it through a 4-inch glass screen? So to address this, we've tried to kind of honor the ceremony of putting music on. So, you start an album in Rdio, and this immersive player expands and takes over your whole viewport, and the whole app actually takes on the look and feel of whatever it is you're listening to. And if you press and hold on a piece of music, that's how you bring up the contextual options for that piece of music. So this kind of long press feature, in a subtle way, is making you aware of how you use your fingers when you're interacting with Rdio, and harkens back to that notion of music being tactile in a small way. What's this mean in whatever you may be working on? I think the key thing to keep in mind here is think about what it is in your product that's most essential and resonates most with your users. So it could be photography or food or a milestone your users reach at a certain point. Whatever it is, find that thing and then just romance the hell out of that. You want to, if you can create an emotion in your user, that's kind of one of the greatest things you can accomplish when you're designing something. So we're going to great lengths to try and romance the hell out of music. Everything else we do is just about getting out of the way. We want to be a matchmaker, connecting users to the music they love. We don't want to be a third wheel. We don't want to hang around and mediate every aspect of that interaction in an ongoing way. Which brings me to Celine Dion. Any Celine fans in the room? It's okay if you are. Very few hands go up. I think a lot of us have kind of a negative visceral reaction when we hear Miss Dion's music, and yet she sells out stadiums and millions of people adore her, right? So I think the lesson here is that taste is irrational. Celine Dion fans would probably hate all the kind of hipster crap I listen to. So we design our software to be unopinionated. We don't try and dictate the path a user has to take in their musical discovery. We offer station and album listening. We don't cram our homepage with a lot of featured music or promotional content. It's all about just getting users on their own path and then trying to get out of the way of that. So what's this mean for our interface design? Rdio is the canvas, the music is the paint. This is how our head of design puts it, and I think it describes it well. Well, if you take the music out of our product, the interface really is just some lines, a few words, and some icons. And so in this way, we're trying to remove any extraneous elements so that all you're left with is the music, and then we try and amplify the music's presence. So we do this with things like full bleed artwork, making the album art as big as we possibly can. These are these great assets we have in our product. We try and really exploit that as much as possible. And then, again, this technique of kind of the album blur where we're really bringing the album art to life and putting that as a focal point. Okay, so those are some of the things we think about when we're approaching designing for mobile. I want to talk a little about how do we actually go about getting those things built? Where do we start? And to begin, I want to talk a little about how our designers work with our engineers at Rdio. So at various points throughout the project, we stop, collaborate, and listen. And at the beginning of the project, this is about discussing the art of the possible. What is the new technology available to us that we can exploit when we're looking to explore new design paths? Towards the end of the project, this is when we hand over something that we think is fully thought through and then realize all the edge cases that we failed to actually consider and go back and try and solve those to hopefully everyone agrees that we have something comprehensive and well thought out. So that's when our discussion begins around building a minimum viable product, MVP. This is your buzzword bingo, take that one down. But actually, we actually think of it a little differently. It's more about, for us, what Andrew Chen calls an MDP, minimum desirable product. This is a subtle difference, I think. We don't really think so much about, at this point in our company anyway, testing the market viability for a feature. It's more about building towards a product vision. So the question we ask is, what's the minimum thing we could build that would be additive to our product experience and in line with that product vision? Usually the answer is going to be either we can ship 5 crappy features or we can pick one and really make it great. And we prefer to take that approach. I think you'll find as, again, if you're just starting out making an app, the first time you launch a feature is when you have the most flexibility. Every successive iteration, there's a tendency to want to retain some of that design and code you've already completed. So take advantage of that first moment when you have the most flexibility to do something really well considered, and then just build on that foundation. That's what I have for you guys today. Thanks a lot.